What is going on, boys? Just a few hours ago now, GGG just finished their like point 4 reveal where they just give us a breakdown of all the information. And as you can see, I took quite a bit of notes and I'm going to try and break down everything important as succinctly and coherently as possible. So the first thing, point 4 was kind of touted to be the league where the end game is saved and fixed. And I guess to rip the band-aid off for you guys quick, that was not the case, unfortunately, due to, I think, development constraints. They did not have enough time to get around to the endgame changes. There were some endgame changes, but it wasn't like a sweeping revamp of the system like what we were kind of expecting. There's no kind of like tower removal level of change. Instead, there was more of a rebalancing how you craft your maps and the density of those maps themselves, which I'll get into momentarily. But unfortunately, yeah, no big buffs to endgame mapping, no system changes, anything like that. So what did they actually change about the endgame? The first thing they changed was a rebalance of the tablets /mapping system. So remember before, every single map, you would start off by re-rolling the map with an omen. I think the meta last week was Rarity. So you start off with a Rarity, omen it for Chaos. Well, I mean, the first thing is you need to make sure it has 6 mods on it. So you have to exalt all your maps to 6 mods. And then after that, you just need to desecrate it. And then after you desecrate it, you reveal it. And then after you reveal it, you have to use the distills in order to add like delirium, pack size, rarity, whatever you wanted. It was really tedious and they got rid of 2 of those steps. So they got rid of the delirium step. So there won't be any delirium on map or forced on maps anymore. And they also got rid of the desecration portion of it, which to be honest, those 2 parts were like the worst parts of mapping. So that's huge. The way they solve that is by rebalancing tablets to make tablets stronger. So as you see here, tablets are pretty much just magic unless you get them from the Arbiter. You can now regal and exalt your tablets so that every single tablet can now be 4 mod. My reservations about this are it's really nice to make the map juicing a lot more streamlined and a lot less tedious to do. But unfortunately, I don't think these changes to tablets are actually going to offset the amount that we lose from our map crafts. Because distilling was an incredibly powerful way to juice your maps. Probably one of the best examples of like the gold standard of budget map juicing would be like adding a paranoia to the map, which would give you 36% delirium when you use 3 and 45% increased rare monsters. Delirium gives monsters toughness, which makes them harder, but it also gives them quantity. So higher delirium, the better. So you get like a pretty insane amount of juice just from deling your maps. And then also desecration. These mods would end up having like some of the best roll ranges for like increased rarity, increased pack size, increased rare monsters, and also give you like a buff to the map that was like pretty meaningful. Like more abyss pits, extra mods on your rare monsters, which gives more quant. And that is all gone now. And all we're getting is essentially you can now roll double the mods on your tablets. And you might be thinking, okay, we lose a little bit of juice on our maps, but we have essentially 2 times more tablets for our map. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to work like that because this tablet right here, which is very, very mid, it's like mid-rolled rarity with mid-rolled additional breaches. This would cost like a div. So you need to be getting the same amount of value that Desecration Delirium would give you out of your tablets, which means you realistically need to roll like 3 good mods on your tablet. And I just don't think that's actually going to be accessible to the average player. That's going to cost like 3 or 4 div easily. And in order to get 4 out of 4 good mods, that's going to be like 5, maybe even 10 div tablets, which none of us can afford. I mean, even a tablet like this last league, this tablet is worth like 10 div and it's only 2 mods. Now, sure, the odds that we get these 2 mods are now higher because you have 2 more rolls per map in order to get them. But still, if you're running the same mods on your tablets this next league as you were in this previous league, you are just straight up losing value on your maps. So that's kind of like, I guess, the bad stuff of this league. But there are a lot of good things. This is fun. I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but it's a rebalancing of map density. So before in tier 1 maps, you would have like 100% density. And then at tier 15 maps, you would have around 140% density. So a 40% increase in the amount of monsters you have at tier 15. They're reducing that. So now it's like the same number of monsters tier 1 to tier 15. However, they introduced a new concept called effectiveness. And now monsters in tier 15 maps will have roughly 40% effectiveness, which means that they will have 40% more life, 40% more experience, and 40% more quantity. So this overall should be net 0 in terms of the amount that we're going to lose versus the amount that we're going to gain. The only difference is that you're not going to kill as many mobs. You're going to be getting the same XP. But I think a lot of people were kind of telling me that that was going to bother them. For me personally, that doesn't really bother me that much. You know, obviously killing more mobs is nice, but I think it might be a little bit less noticeable than we think. But at the same time, who knows? It might feel a little bit weird going into maps and seeing it be kind of empty, even though you're getting the same amount of loot. This might be a situation where even though it number-wise it's the same, it might feel bad. I'm really not sure. There were definitely some buffs to the Atlas tree. So if you see here, Zesh's Madness no longer provides rare monsters have Soul Eater. Instead, rare breach monsters have Onslaught and 50% increased effectiveness. This is, I think, going to be a more modifier, right? You're going to have 50% more essentially quantity on your rare breach monsters at the cost of one modifier on the rares. This should equate to like just from my back of the envelope map to like pretty much 30% more loot from your rare monsters. And again, back of the envelope math, rare monsters are like 90% of the loot in Path of Exile 2. Means that this is a substantial like 28 to 30% increase in the amount of loot you're getting to your map, assuming that you are going to be doing breach, which was meta last league and I think will continue to be meta again this league. One surprising thing is I think Deli is actually going to be a really, really important thing to add onto your maps, because Deli no longer can roll on your maps. So we actually might need to have to do Deli tablets now. And they buffed some of the Atlas nodes on the Delirium. 25% chance to add additional modifier and 100% rarity of items on magic monsters. This actually kind of opens up the door to magic monster farming in Path of Exile 2, which hasn't really been there before. Although this will only happen on maps with multiple Delirium modifiers. I'm actually not sure how uncommon this is. I was told this is like 25% chance, but again, I'm not sure on the exact numbers. But this could open up the door to like multiple deli fishing on your maps. On top of that, they're adding this, which essentially makes it so every time you kill a deli monster in your map, that currency that it would drop goes to the map boss. And then when you kill the map boss, there's a 20% chance to duplicate the currency. This is pretty much just 20% more currency from deli monsters, which I don't think is going to be a significant buff. That's probably only going to be like a 5% buff to loot, but it's still a buff to loot. And I think it's, you know, pretty much free. Definitely not bad at all. This is hard to quantify, so I didn't really give it a number, but this would be something that you have to like kind of test it and see, because we really don't understand the implications of monster rarity multiplied by additional modifiers, specifically on blue monsters. The last thing is it's not real. This essentially just makes it so 10% increased quantity of items dropped by rare monsters, because every single rare monster will have this manifest delirium demons in your map, and manifested delirium demons give rare monsters 10% increased quant. This is really good because 10% increased quant is pretty much just 10% increased loot. And on top of that, you're going to be spawning essentially more monsters, which is going to be a multiplier with more loot as well. All in all, Delirium got a huge buff. I would say total, if I were to have to give it a number, I would say like this is like 25% increased loot just from Deli. And Breach got a huge buff as well. It's like 30% increased Breach loot. It's pretty insane. Like all together, it's just very, very nice. One last thing I need to say, the Abyss is going to be a mainstay. So Abyss is still going to be here. The way you juice Abyss onto your maps is going to be through Abyss tablets. And they kind of went over some of the Atlas nodes to it, and they look pretty good. Like it's going to be increased monsters from your abysses, that kind of stuff. But there's also a node, and they didn't show how much, but it's going to be, if you complete the Abyss in this map, there's a chance that maps nearby will have natural overrun on them, which is fucking insane. So I think the loot on the maps is going to be like, there's going to be the same number of abysses because you're going to be forced to run an Abyss tablet every single map. And then on top of that, all these other buffs to Deli, Breach, they're all really solid. I think there's actually a pretty significant chance that map loot will just be straight up buffed like 10 to like 20%, depending on how hard it is to roll good tablets. One other thing to mention is that tablets got a small buff, not just to the fact that you can double up the mods that you can get on them, but a lot of the roll ranges have been just buffed, right? It's like 18 to 30% rarity from like 10 to 30 before. So like the bottom half of the ranges were increased. And on top of that, you might notice that this quantity of items found in the map tablet was removed, but it wasn't actually, it was just kind of repurposed into effectiveness. So now it's like, instead of getting 4 to 10 quantity, you have 7 to 11 quantity, but that quantity also makes it so your monsters are like 10% harder to kill, like they have more life, and they also give like 10% more experience, like that kind of thing. This is overall a buff to quantity for sure, right? That's just a straight up buff to quantity. So what is the actual new league mechanic? It's Alva, and if you play PoE 1, you have a little familiarity with it, but essentially what's happening is every single map, there's going to be like this little circle area, and you have to complete the circle area. I think every map will have 5 of them. And when you complete 5 of them, you will get essentially a key in order to go into an Alva temple. And the Alva temple is going to be kind of tedious to set up, but essentially you're going to be playing, it's going to be like Build a Bear Workshop, except you're going to be building a temple with rooms, and these rooms have specific buffs to the entire temple itself, or can give you some pretty interesting options, which will end up resulting in crafting materials. So for example, you can now double corrupt your gear. So you corrupt it the first time, and then you can bring it to the temple, and then you can corrupt it a second time. The second time, however, is a 50% chance to add like an additional corrupt onto the item, or a 50% chance to completely destroy it. So it's very, very high risk and maybe not even that high reward. It seems a little underwhelming to me, to be honest. But the good news is that unlike Path of Exile 1, where you actually have to go into the temple to do this, you can go into the temple and you can actually take out that currency and then use it on an item like in your hideout, or you can sell it to someone else. The second room is going to be a Foulborn unique generating room. So if you played PoE 1, you're gonna know what that means. If not, essentially it just means so that you can use a Chaos Orb on a Vol unique and re-roll one of the modifiers on that unique into a different Vol unique modifier. It can only be done on Vol uniques. That part was kind of confusing to me. So you can't do this on the Calm's chest to remove the no spirit thing and then get something insano. It has to be on Vol items. I'm not sure exactly what those are, but like an example of this would be Aziri's Acuity here. You could re-roll any one of these mods. Like you can re-roll the 19 intelligence, you can re-roll the leech from crit, you can re-roll the percentage armor, and get any other Vol specific mod on there. So you have the potential to get some really, really amazing unique items where you can remove the downside and then add an additional upside. Lastly, at least last time was shown to us, is you have the ability to get a third leg in PoE 2. I'm not even kidding. There is a temple mod which makes it so you can modify yourself and you can get like more attack speed, more movement speed. We're not exactly sure on what the mods are going to be, but there is a downside. You know, you get the third leg and you run faster or you do other things faster. But the downside is if you die, you can lose that appendage and you have to go back into the temple and get another one. If you are a Fub Gooner like I was, you are dying a lot. So that might not necessarily be as good as we think, but we also don't know the entire scope of how that works, but it's essentially a temporary buff until you die. So in a way, it actually kind of benefits the idea of like the one portal per map thing, where it's like you just don't want to die. You actually need to build into some defenses now in order to actually maximize the utility of this mod. They also introduced the Druid. I don't want to get into it too much because we don't really know enough about it. But like the Druid, as I understand it, it's the concept of you can shapeshift into a bunch of different creatures, or you can summon some other creatures to come with you and help you fight. However, surprisingly enough, shapeshifting isn't specific to the Druid. You now have access to talismans, which are two-handed weapons that allow you to shapeshift into one of three things: the wolf, the bear, and the wyvern. The bear is supposed to be like more of a tanky, like warrior style. The wolf is supposed to be a lot more agile, quicker. I think you get some movement speed bonuses, but a little bit squishier. And then the wyvern is more of like the magic-based caster transformation. So next is going to be rune nerfs. I mean, if you want to take a look at the list, you can. Many of the good runes are now limited to one. So there's no more +3 additional arrows on your bow. There's no more +3 all skills to your wands. There's no more 48 attack speed to your gloves. And unfortunately, there's no more 30% more movement speed to your boots. This is a huge nerf across the board. The impacts for this are not just going to be movement speed and that kind of stuff, but also, you know, exceptional bases are going to be worth a lot less. Obviously, movement speed and like power creep has kind of been tailored down a little bit, which is, I think, necessary in some ways, but at the same time, it's going to feel pretty bad for the normal player, or maybe not if you've never even used these currencies. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is going to be they're nerfing rarity, but they're not nerfing it in the way that you'd expect. They're not actually nerfing the impact of rarity. So, for example, before it was like you need 100 to 150% rarity on your gear in order to kind of maximize the benefits of rarity before there were some diminishing returns. That is still there, but they're nerfing the amount of rarity you can get per roll as an affix on your gear, which does kind of reduce the rarity that you're going to get, but not really though, because all it really, I think, is going to do is provide more affix pressure on your gear to get rarity. So for example, the max roll for rarity right now on most pieces of gear is like 25, right? So that means in order to get to that 150% rarity, you know, quote unquote breakpoint, we're not actually sure if 150 is the breakpoint or not. To get there, that would cost us essentially 6 affixes max rolled. If they nerf it now, so it goes from 25% to 20, now we're going to need like 7, maybe even 8 affixes in order to achieve the same job, which means that we now have 2 less affixes for like, you know, potentially energy shield or armor or evasion, or like 2 less affixes for resistances, deflection, that kind of thing. So that's just one thing to consider. In terms of crafting, they didn't really reveal any new currencies for this league, which is kind of disappointing, but I have high hopes that that is just going to be coming into a separate patch. They kind of did that last league where they showed us like 1 or 2 currencies that were available, but they didn't show us everything, and there were a ton more available at launch. But with the crafting, it seems like it's going to be just nerfs so far. They completely removed homogenizing exalts, which I thought they were going to nerf, because homogenizing exalts, let's be honest, were way too broken. But I think they're also the thing that kind of holds PoE 2 crafting together, because without homogenizing exalts, there's now going to be a huge gap in crafting where like it's guaranteed to get 2 mods at the beginning, and then you're going to be guaranteed maybe 1 mod at the end with your desecration. But now the middle 3 mods are going to be very, very hard to get. And I think that's going to feel really, really bad for a lot of players. What I would have preferred to have seen was not a removal of the homogenizing exalt, but more of a reduction in its power. So instead of guaranteeing the tags, maybe they could have made it so the modifiers were like 10 times more likely to show up. So there still is some sort of element of RNG there, but it's significantly more deterministic than just YOLOing an exalt, for example. Anyways, this wasn't explicitly stated in the patch notes, but it was stated by, I think, either Mark or Jonathan during the Q&A. Last thing I want to go over. So essentially, reduction to movement speed while casting got giga nerfed in 2 ways. So number 1, the ruin that gave it to you before is just gone. They deleted it. And the places where you can get it on the tree, they got nerfed as well. So you can get less per point, but the amount of points is higher. So in order to get the same amount of reduction on the tree as before, you're going to need to have a higher point investment. So it's just across the top, huge nerfs to pretty much any caster build, really, because you really do want to get a certain degree of decreased movement speed penalty while casting. Otherwise, it's just going to feel really slow and sluggish while you're kind of trying to zoom through a map on a caster build. The way you kind of mitigate this on the most meta build last league, which was bows, is by using a Roa. And they actually, I don't want to say nerf, they rebalanced Roa. It no longer gives you the 15% more movement speed, but now it goes from 80% reduction to 100% reduction, which just means that if you're playing a bow or spear build, you will have a huge movement speed advantage over a caster. And I think that is going to have really meaningful impact on what the meta for the meta builds are going to be, because if you're not playing a bow or a spear build, you'll be in a situation now where 45, 50, maybe even more movement speed less than one of these builds, because you're casting all the time and your movement speed is going to be so low because you're casting all the time and you have no way to mitigate the movement speed reductions while casting. That's going to be kind of rough. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's a pretty substantial nerf to casters. If a caster and a bow / spear build have the same damage, the same movement speed, same tankiness, everything, and the bow build takes 5 minutes to clear the map, the caster is going to take like 7 or 8. With that all being said, like that's all the things that I really wanted to go over. That's most of what the reveal was, but I want to say like I wouldn't doom too hard yet. I know a lot of this is nerfs, but I feel like every patch, it does feel like there's kind of a lot of nerfs and a lot of changes that like kind of are disappointing for the players, but there's also a lot of good stuff that when we see the actual league launch will make us probably feel a little bit better, or like, you know, as they start revealing more and more information will make us feel better. I had kind of some similar feelings last league to a lot of the nerfs that they were going to do and a lot of the changes that they're going to do. And last league was absolutely an amazing league, one of my favorite video game experiences ever. So I think there's still a lot that we need to see before we kind of make a judgment of league dead, go play Diablo 4 kind of thing. But anyways, that is it for the whole video. I hope to see you guys on league launch. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear you guys' thoughts. A lot of people in my chat were dooming really, really hard, but I am curious to see what you folks on YouTube have to say about this matter.